What is up, hotties? Welcome back to another episode of Stay Hot. I'm Blaiden Kirk, joined as always by my two favorite co-hosts of all time, Matthew Sponauer and Theo Ash. Today, we're talking about our NFC playoff predictions. We just gave you our AFC playoff predictions last week. So obviously, NFL season is basically 1 week away to the date. And that's what we're going to talk about today is our NFC playoff predictions. But before we get into that, Matt, Theo, how are you guys doing today?
I'm doing all right, Blaiden. I don't have too much to report. I went grocery shopping.
Okay.
I went to the album store and put them up behind me. So
Respect
or the record
eras.
store. People are gonna think you're talking about Taylor Swift when you say respect eras.
No, I'm talking about Queens of the Stone Age.
I had to pick up the Queen's album when I saw the Oh Brother, Where Art Thou soundtrack. We got Bandana by Freddie Gibbs, and is Madlib the producer on that one? He works with The Alchemist on Alfredo, and then I believe it's Madlib on Bandana, and I think that is my favorite Freddie Gibbs album. So those are the albums I've got displayed behind me. I picked up some new ones as well, but I think I'll rotate them in, and you'll see them when they arrive.
I respect it.
I like it. I have nothing going on.
No.
I got nothing to report.
No.
Sorry, buddy. It's been business as usual.
Business as usual.
What about you?
You know what? It's basically been business as usual for me too, except I am touring a house today. So I will keep you guys updated with that.
Big time move.
Apparently there's an offer in, so it's might not be in the cards, but it's very rare that I even find one worth looking at. So this is a W.
If one person makes an offer and you're not comfortable doing that, they'll probably outbid you. Right,
exactly, because people are typically bidding at or above asking anyway. But regardless, we can talk about some football. We don't have any Stay Hot Sigma rant for you guys today. We're doing our NFC playoff predictions, and we're doing it the same format as we did the AFC, which is we start with who we think the 1 seed will be, and we'll work down to 7 because that is kind of the more interesting format to go because the 1 seed is somewhat more predictable than the 6 and 7 seed.
Well, I can go ahead and ask you, Theo, do you have the 49ers as the 1 seed and the Eagles as the 2?
No, I've got the Eagles as the 1 seed.
Yes.
Fair enough. I thought maybe there was a chance you rolled with the 49ers.
No, you didn't think there was a chance that I would roll with the 49ers, Matt?
No. Did you?
No.
Right.
I think the 49ers are a little bit more fragile than the Eagles, and I think that the quarterback situation and just the overall injury proneness of the roster makes the Eagles a bit of a safer bet. Although Super Bowl hangovers have happened a lot, teams that lose the Super Bowl typically don't tend to come back, and that's usually the peak of their run instead of an ascending part of it. But I think the Eagles are talented enough. I think they're special enough that they're my 1 seed again.
Yeah, I mean, on paper, this is one of the most talented offenses of all time, and I don't think that's a stretch to say. I mean, you have a high-end quarterback. You have high-end receivers. Goddard's a great tight end. The offensive line is not only stacked across the board, but with great depth. There's maybe some questions about the defense overall for them, and they play a tougher schedule. They do. But at the end of the day, I mean, they're probably the most complete roster in the NFL. So I also have them as the 1 seed. The 49ers, I think, can challenge. A lot of that comes down to health. And maybe something you've brought up with the Eagles is like, oh, their schedule wasn't very hard last year. And that's a big deal for, winning that many games. A lot of times a team that ends up getting the 1 seed is just which really good team has a really easy schedule. Mm-hmm. But the thing is that I was looking into it, and the 49ers also had a very easy schedule. In fact, they had an unbelievably easy schedule. Their opponent win percentage was 41.7%. To put that into perspective, this is last year I'm talking about. To put that into perspective, I was able to look at the numbers from the last 10 years. Not a single team has played a schedule that weak just off win-loss. And I could not look back farther.
Wow.
I couldn't find the numbers.
That's
it's really
pretty
crazy.
jarring. I'm not gonna.
Now, there's other ways to judge this type of stuff, of course, and part of that comes in if you win a lot of games and you're 14-3 or 13-4 or whatever, then you're taking away some wins from your opponents right there. And I don't mean that as a criticism towards the 49ers, but that kind of took away the reasoning of like, well, maybe the Eagles' schedule is just harder. I still think it comes down to a game or two, but when you take into account the injury proneness of the 49ers and the questionable Bosa situation, which I would still guess is going to work out, but is still a question mark when we're splitting hairs here among the top two teams in the NFC. I feel safer rolling with the Eagles. Even if there's problems on defense, the offense is going to be one of, if not the best in the league.
And the defense has a lot of answers. I think that you can't discount the fact that their star defensive tackle Hargrave is gone, both starting linebackers, both starting safeties. That's a lot of turnover. Like that's a lot of starters that are new, that are completely unproven, really. And yeah, like Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, you'd have a lot of hope that you could just slide them in, no problem. Same thing with Nakobe Dean. Like there's a world where they just keep going without a hitch on the defensive side of the football. But there's also a world where that doesn't quite happen, and maybe that middle of the field or their pass defense or run defense, maybe right straight up the gut, isn't quite as strong as it was last year. But I think that this is a team that has the kind of a special aura to it with Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni. I think that their intensity stands out even among past Super Bowl teams that I've seen there. Like maybe I'm not around them, but I don't know. I trust this organization from the owner, Jeff Lurie, to Howie Roseman on down to be able to stabilize at this point. So yeah, you're right, Matt. The 49ers schedule and the Eagles schedule, both very easy last year. Win-loss is not the only way to look at it, although I think what you did was enlightening, that it was just so low. But Football Outsiders had the 49ers with the 31st ranked strength of schedule last year and the Eagles at 32nd. So no matter how you slice it, whether it be just points or some other advanced metric, like they had very easy paths last year. But yeah, with both of these teams, it's pretty tough to say anyone has surpassed them in terms of talent.
I mean, you can say they had an easy path last year. They get to the playoffs and they throttle the Giants, and then they beat the 49ers when they face in the NFC Championship game. So it's like, what more could you possibly ask them to do? They played the guys you asked them to play, and they beat pretty much everyone, with the exception of like 2 games when Jalen Hurts wasn't playing, and I think there was one other. Right,
the Washington game, and even that one, there were some questionable calls like that decided that. So they were right in that one. It's not like they ever got blown out, and it didn't happen in the playoffs. Like there is not a single team that this team couldn't go toe to toe with.
Right.
So yeah, I think that they are a serious, maybe not dynasty, because it's kind of tough to say anyone will be a dynasty except for maybe the Chiefs. But, over the course of years, it's sustainable to be a great team. Like the Pittsburgh Steelers with the Killer Bees, they were great. They were in the conversation all the time. Like I think the Eagles can be at least a team like that, where like regression isn't really a problem when you've got the best skill position group and an elite quarterback and a great offensive line and a good defense.
Depends on your definition of dynasty. Those Steelers teams were great for a long time, but nobody would consider them a dynasty because they didn't go win a bunch of Super Bowls, in the sort of the last half of that run or whatever. Maybe the Eagles are more reasonable to give like sort of that title. They'll be a consistent contender, you'd hope, for a while.
Yeah.
They're like NFC dynasty, or for the Steelers case, an AFC dynasty perhaps as in they're at the top of the conference for a long time, and whether they win it or not is up in the air, but they are at least contenders year in and year out. And I think as long as all their stars are on the same team, and I think some faces can change, but I don't think enough change to take him out of that contention. And Hurts, who knows? Maybe he could play even better next year. Maybe he'll regress, but
he won't.
No, and
you're right, Blaiden.
And again, with the defense, like, yeah, they're losing some guys, but they're also adding some, you know, and being as good as Hargrave and maybe expecting like nothing to go wrong and there'd be zero problems at defensive tackle, I get, but like, could you do much better than Davis and Carter? Probably not. Like, that's about as good as it gets as far as like we're going to replace them with young, cheap talent. So
right.
I think they've worked well, kind of moving on from guys, and I still see them, you know, as the top of the NFC. It's not exactly a hot take.
No, it's not exactly the hot take. I think they could even go 14-3 again if Hurts is healthy, 17 games instead of 15 games. Like, even with the harder schedule, like, there's just not a lot of teams who can go band for band with the Eagles' star power. Really excited to see that San Francisco game week 13. That was setting up to just be I thought a fantastic matchup that was ruined early because of the Purdy injury. So
it really is a shame. Yeah, that game really sucked.
That game really sucked. It was one of the bigger letdowns in recent playoff history. But KC, Buffalo, San Francisco, Dallas, Seattle, New York, you know, Dallas in there again, Miami, Washington. Yeah. We'll see if the Eagles can prove their mettle this year with that schedule. Like, I think they can beat every single team in the league, but yeah, it's going to be way tougher this year, I think. So with that being said, though, like, there's just no other roster that I'm like 13 wins, 14 wins.
Yeah. Or it's just like lock it in because they're just that good. So we all have the Eagles as the 1 seed, and I assume we all have the 49ers as the 2 seed. Unless anyone has...
Nah, I think we all are in agreement there.
I think Seattle can challenge for San Francisco, like, at the top of the division, but I don't project them to beat San Francisco.
If we're saying like completeness of roster, like, Philly has the most complete roster in the NFC. San Francisco is still right there, even with like the quarterback turmoil and the questions that we have there and about their injury, how well they can maintain health throughout the season. There's still a more complete team than Seattle, because I look at Seattle's front seven and I'm like, is Jordan
they're weak
Brooks
in the trenches.
Yeah,
they're about as good as you can be elsewhere, but they're very weak in the trenches. Yeah.
And then Dallas can compete with Philadelphia. I should say that as well.
Yeah.
But we'll get into Dallas and Seattle later.
We will. Yeah. The 49ers,
those are probably your 3 seeds. I'm interested to hear. Well, I guess Dallas can't.
Dallas and Seattle cannot be 3 or 4
contention.
Seeds. Yeah, if they don't win the division.
You're right.
But the
Forgot
49ers.
About how football works there.
Well, it's just the NFL.
It's just
divisions, conferences. I don't. But the 49ers, I mean, they're still going to be right there. Their defense is still going to be phenomenal, I think, with Fred Warner. If we talk about the Eagles lost Hargrave, the 49ers gained Hargrave. That front seven is That front seven is completely ludicrous. It's out of this world how ridiculous it is. Unless, of course, they end up trading Nick Bosa, then we might be looking at a little bit of a weird team. But they still have Fred Warner, and they still have that safety duo. Like, the middle of the field is going to be completely impenetrable, I think. They have Ward at corner, and as long as they don't trade Bosa, I mean, it's probably the best defense in football, or one of them.
Yeah, you've got 2 Defensive Player of the Year candidates out there.
Yeah.
And then some other studs, too.
Same old Niners, as far as I'm concerned. I think it's okay to say that. I know the quarterback changed, but like, that's just not a big deal to me.
I mean, really, that's same old Niners, too. Let's be real.
Right. So Hargrave was a big get. You know, their big weakness was sort of attacking the other defensive tackle there. And now you can't attack the second guy. And If they get Bosa back, the front four is just so nasty. You got Warner there. I mean, yeah, there's some holes on this team. It's not all perfect, you know. There's some offensive line questions for sure.
Yeah.
They've got weapons on offense, but pretty much every single one of them is injury prone. Purdy is like a game manager, and they did lose a couple of defensive guys, but I don't expect anything too wildly different from them, and I still think they're a really complete team.
Purdy has to take some steps, I think. I think last year he was a bit lucky. I think even when you go back to that Seattle game, there were some dropped picks and some weird underthrows that still got caught for touchdowns. And, you know, you look at the stats and it looks like he just absolutely lit it up. But against some of, like, who knows what would have happened in a full game against the Eagles. I could definitely see there being kind of a limit on Brock Purdy if he doesn't take a step. Now, we got to judge him like we judge a lot of rookie quarterbacks, in that there is room for him to grow. Like, just because he's in a win now situation doesn't mean he just is who he is forever. Like, he could be better than he was last year, but the person we saw last year, like, I don't trust him to avoid mistakes or make huge plays. Like, I trust, and I saw from Jalen Hurts in the Super Bowl. And I think that that's just at the most important position. One of the other things that sets, you know, Philadelphia and San Francisco apart from, you know, just the health of the roster. So I still have some questions about Purdy, but he does offer like the point and shoot ability that you need in the Shanahan offense, and like the ability to be accurate over the middle of the field and rip it over the middle of the field. And he offers a little bit of that, you know, scramble around, create something that Jimmy Garoppolo couldn't. So, like, I think that he's going to be fine back there, but
and he cost $1 million to Garoppolo's 25, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
And you would hope that would translate into bringing Bosa back, but we'll see.
Yeah, you would hope so. I really think they will bring Bosa back, but
yeah, I mean, with all the guys they're paying, and we were talking about this the other day, it's like you list out all the dudes they're paying, it's like not a single one of them is better than Bosa. You know, not a single, and they're playing some really great players.
I mean,
none
maybe
of them are as good
Fred
as Bosa.
Warner. You don't think Fred Warner's as good at?
Fred Warner might be better within his position, but I'd say Bosa, just as an edge rusher, is probably more valuable.
Okay.
I'm also biased because he went to Ohio State, of course.
Fair enough.
But
yeah, I mean, I can't argue.
But
with that.
I mean, it's
I don't know
all the guys they're paying. I think it would be psychotic for Bosa to be the one that they can't get done. And you went out and you got Hardgrave. It's like, if you knew you couldn't afford Bosa, why on earth would you go sign him for what, $20 million?
Oh yeah,
so, yeah.
It just doesn't make any sense. So I would say he should be back.
Yeah.
So who's you guys' 3rd seed? I think that's where the conversation in the NFC really starts. Is who do you have as the better winner between the North and the South?
I have Detroit.
You have Detroit.
I do as well.
I have the Saints. Ugh, that sounded gross leaving my mouth.
Yeah, it sounded gross hitting my ears too. Yeah.
I get where you're coming from.
Yeah,
I hate to say it.
I guess I could see a world where the Saints are good. I think the Lions are a little more complete than we give them credit for. I do think, like, even though, and I think we said this around draft time, we were critical of their draft process, because it's like, you definitely could have taken better players in the first round and probably still gotten the guys you wanted in the second, outside of maybe Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't know if he would have fallen to you, but I still look at the defense and I see it being better than it was last year, at least in the secondary, right? With CJ Gardner-Johnson, with who's the guy they drafted? Names that are awful. Brian Branch, and Emmanuel Mosley and Cam Sutton. Like, that is a massive improvement over what they were working with last year.
How massive?
How is it?
CJ Gardner-Johnson, like, they were the worst defense in the league last year. They had these guys. Like, where do you think that brings them?
I actually think there's more upside on that defense than you're giving them credit for.
Yeah.
You like the edge rushers?
4 huge additions
They're 4 medium additions. They're medium additions.
Steelers fans love Cam Sutton. I can give you Emmanuel Mosley because he's probably injury prone. But he's supposed to be.
Their corners were really like banged up last year. You have to keep in mind. I actually think the Lions are kind of the inverse Saints.
What do you explain that?
The logic with the Saints is like, okay, on paper they don't. The defense, and I this is going to come off as like a shot at Detroit, but on paper the defense for the Saints probably isn't as good as they actually are. Do you know what I mean? Like the roster, you look at it last year, like with that defensive line, like, man, they must have really struggled. And they didn't. They were a top 10 defense, right? EPA per play, if you want to look at it that way. But the offense was really rough, kind of banged up, didn't work, a lot of problems. But now you look at their offense and you're like, okay, well, Carr is probably an upgrade from Dalton that can only go up. The receivers can only be healthier. So, and they play a very easy schedule. So I'm betting on a pretty good defense team. Like the Saints defense will probably be better than it looks on paper again. And I'm betting on just like sort of any offensive improvement because that's sort of the direction it kind of has to go, it feels like. The Lions are the reverse of that. Their offense doesn't quite look like it should be top 5, to be completely honest with you. Very good offensive line. Amon-Ra St. Brown is awesome. But the receiver depth outside of that isn't great. And Goff is, more of a game manager guy to me. But they had like a top 5 offense last year in EPA per play. Ben Johnson is fantastic. The offensive line really is great. Yada, yada, yada. But defensively, they were terrible. But you look at the talent they added on defense, and you look at the young edge rushers they have, and you say, well, you're probably going to get some growth out of those young guys. I think Branch can play. I think Sutton can play. I think Gardner Johnson can play. They only can be healthier in the defensive back room. They're probably going to get better, and they don't play a very tough schedule. Not a super easy one like the Saints, but they don't play a very tough schedule. So I think that they're due. And the question is, which one do you like a little bit more?
Yes, I like the Saints more than the Lions. I just think people might be anticipating a bit too much of a linear path of progression from the Lions. Like 2 years ago, they were terrible. Last year, they were pretty good. Next year, it's the year. And my thing is just, where is the real leap in tier of contender coming from their missing the playoff season last year to this year? And it is all defense, right? Like they added some good pieces, but I just am not totally sure if those pieces completely move the needle for me. And on offense, I just am not as high on the offense as a lot of people are. Like you said, they're maybe not top 5. It's like they're maybe not top 10.
I would look at the Saints defense and I would argue that, but I just think like the powers that be make them so. My argument is that we're not talking about Detroit winning 12 games. We're talking about them maybe winning 10.
Yeah.
The NFC North is not particularly tough, and the battle for the 3 seed is going to be between them and the winner of the NFC South, which is not particularly tough. Now, I don't think the Saints are a bad pick for the 3 seed at all, but we're talking about a 9-win team picking up a few more after the best quarterback in the division just left. And that's not a, shot at love or anything. But I don't disagree that maybe like, oh, everything is just going perfectly and swimmingly forever for the Lions. Like, it might not be the case. My big concern is when Ben Johnson leaves, if he leaves this offseason, which is an incredibly real possibility, is that going to be like an unreplaceable fold of the team, an unreplaceable guy? Like, you can't just go find another Ben Johnson. And would you have disaster then? But as it stands right now, I mean, that was like my number one guy I wanted the Panthers to hire. I'm very happy with Reich. That's my number one guy for a reason. They had a great offense last year for a reason. I don't see any major reason for that to change, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I think it would just come down to maybe some other offenses being healthier and them. They just don't have much meat on the bone to improve. That's my thing with the Lions. That's
very fair.
They don't have any new receivers. In fact, their receiving core might be worse than it was at the beginning of last season, or at least about the same. Yeah. Their quarterback is still Goff. Their offensive line is still strong at the same points and weaker at the same points. The running backs are better, but to me, like, how much does running back really move? No,
100%. And I guess the big question mark is Jamison Williams, who needs to look good
He needs to
pretty
look
soon.
good.
I was not super impressed by what he showed last year. Granted, coming off an injury, and now he's coming off in a suspension. He's got to get some games, you know. And I honestly think a lot of good receivers look at pretty good pretty quickly. Williams did very, very little. There's obviously still some opportunity for him to come in and make an impact off suspension, but I think with receivers, it's like if you don't do it year one, then I'm not like banking on it 100%. You know,
Right?
Yeah.
he is in a very weird situation. I don't know that, but if I was a Lions fan, I'd be saying, well, our areas for improvement are Gibbs and Williams are the new weapons.
Yeah.
Williams, I'm maybe a little bit lower on than Gibbs, but it can happen. I think the defense really will be pretty solid. I think it has more positions I feel good about than bad.
Yeah, I feel decent about most of it. Like, I think the defensive line is all right. I think Campbell was the wrong pick in the first round. I'll say that.
I agree, but I don't like. He's not a bad player.
I think he's not going to be like that great for his rookie season. I watched him in preseason, and I was like, yeah, the athletic limitations to me, like changing direction. I thought he looked a little like this isn't someone who's really going to shore up your passing attack at all. And
Can he be a plus run defender though?
I think he can be a plus run defender. My concern with the Lions is that the defense looks fine on paper, but the style that they play is very just we're better than you overall. Like they line up and they play a lot of press man coverage. They'll blitz and create one-on-ones in the secondary and on the front seven. And it's like, do they have the guys to actually win all of those opportunities? They really don't. And that's why their defense was so bad last year, is because they put a lot on their plate. That's how Justin Jefferson gets 223 yards on you. Yeah. And I look at their defense now, and it's like, it's better. I think that when you look at their ranks, they won't be in the basement like they were last year. But I think the only place the offense can really go is if Jameson Williams totally steps it up, or they put more on Goff's plate and he handles it really well. And it's like, I don't really think either of those things are going to happen. So I think the other teams are going to catch up to their offense, and their defense is still going to be maybe not terrible, but mid. And I think with the Saints, which is my number 3 team, I trust I think Olave's could be a superstar. Like Michael Thomas.
Let me ask you this. Do you think the Saints defense has anywhere to go but down, like you do with the Lions offense?
I think that they can remain pretty stable.
But I would argue the same thing about the Lions offense. I think very fairly, the Lions offense probably can only finish, if we're talking about just like EPA per play, probably will only be worse. Like it's kind of maxed out. It feels like what it is. Saints defense, I think, is the exact same way. You're running back a largely similar group or with guys who are reserves. Like I don't feel better about their defensive line at all. And a lot of their star key players are just a year older. I mean, Cameron Jordan, I don't know how much left he has in the tank at all.
Yeah.
Tyrann Mathieu is getting up there, and these guys played good last year, but unless you think defensive tackle Clemson first round, can't think
Brian
of his name. Brian Brzee, unless you think he's going to step in immediately and make a big impact, which isn't impossible, but he's more of a project guy. I think you have to kind of be worried about how well they can sustain what they've got. The defensive line really is a problem for them.
I agree. I think that they are they're in the same tier. So arguing one over the other, I think that, everything you're saying is valid. I would also say, I guess, in terms of Saints being the 3 seed, I would say the NFC North is slightly tougher than the NFC South.
Yeah, I would agree. The Lions' schedule is slightly tougher, but I also think the Lions were slightly better last year.
They were.
Yeah.
They were better last year. So it's all a big pile up.
I do have some concerns with the Saints offense too. I mean, the idea is that Carr is maybe not great, but he's okay, and Thomas and Olave can be good. And it's like pretty good defense, weak schedule, and we can create explosives on offense. That's the game plan. Not a bad one, but that passing attack could go bad so quickly.
Yeah.
Michael Thomas has not played a full season in forever. He is even the most diehard Saints fan has to agree.
He's played less football than Trey Lance over the last 3 years.
I mean, it's like if Thomas goes down, then it's like the receivers get really thin again.
Yeah.
And Olave is great, but he was getting crushed last year. He was getting banged up last year. I mean, you could argue that's why he didn't win Offensive Player of the Year or Offensive Rookie of the Year. I mean, of course. So yes. I'm worried about that. And Carr last year, he had weapons then too. And it didn't result.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest Carr fan.
And it didn't result in the best stuff ever.
And not just weapons, he had his best friend as his wide receiver one.
I see. Oh, well, he's got Adams and he's got Waller and, all that. But Waller is injury prone. And if it's like Adams and then Renfro, and Renfro got banged up and all that. And it's like, man, that gets thin quick. And then it's a lot more on Carr. And it didn't work out for Vegas.
Close.
Which is partially because they lost a lot of one-score games. Like, they were kind of close in a bunch and didn't win them. And it's like they just kept not getting the breaks over and over and over. But I don't know, man. I could totally see the Saints offense losing a couple of guys, and all of a sudden it looks really, really bleak.
Let me ask you
but
this.
I could say that as well for the Lions defense. I think they're very similar teams, just kind of on the other ends of the spectrum.
Do you think do you think the Saints offense this year will be better than the Raiders offense was last year?
It's a good question.
It is a good question. I would say
I don't know.
I'll pull up the EPA per play on the
all
Raiders
right.
offense. Why not? Raiders offense EPA per play ranked 15th.
I think
not that the EPA per play is end all be all. I'm aware. I know I keep bringing it up, but
it's not a league average. I think it can be better. I think it can be about the same, if not better, because as like Devontae Adams is a superstar and Josh Jacobs was a superstar last season. I think that Josh McDaniels and Carr did not get along, and I think like it was just kind of a mess philosophically between the head coach and the play caller. And that's why they let Derek Carr walk for nothing. They didn't get a single pick for Derek Carr. Like Derek, I'm not a big Derek Carr fan, but that's crazy. I think that really speaks to just how kind of bad things were behind the scenes, that they benched him at the end of the scene and just kind of released him. And I don't yes, Josh Jacobs and Devontae were super good supporting pieces that maybe the Saints don't have. But I think they can have like a more normal culture and like a more normal or smooth offense. And I think they can be league average like the Raiders were with a better defense.
Maybe. I just think that like the Raiders had the third leading receiver in yards, and Devontae, he also led the league in receiving touchdowns. And they also had the league's leading rusher in Josh Jacobs, and they were a league average offense.
It takes a lot more than two players, though, and if they can be a little bit more well-rounded than those Raiders teams, I think it's possible. I think it's possible with the easiest schedule. I think it's possible.
Yeah, true. Easier. Yeah.
So I personally, I prefer the Lions. I feel a little bit more secure about their offense kind of returning. I know the Saints defense is the Saints defense, and I don't want to disrespect them too much, but I do feel like there's no position group on the Lions where I'm like, that might be entirely bad,
Right.
And then I think their defense of improvement is more guaranteed than the Saints offensive improvement. So the schedule is a little tougher. Schedule matters a lot. I don't hate the Saints pick at 3. I went with the Lions.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I think there's a bunch of mid teams in the middle of the NFC that'll just kind of be scratching and clawing for relevancy. And I think that the Lions are one, the Saints are one, and then whoever your 4 seeds are, I think that we'll probably have some different answers for this one. But who do you have here? Because I think that there's even more question in like the middle of this. So for me, it's the NFC North. For you, it's the NFC South. Who do you have winning?
The NFL season is right around the corner, and you're all going to want to go to all of your favorite teams' games this year, and that's why you need to use Game Time. All right, buying tickets to your favorite games and your favorite events should not be stressful, and Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you with killer deals on last-minute tickets at their best price guaranteed. You can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped to go watch. I know you're all Browns fans because I'm a Browns fan. You listen to Stay Hot, so you can get hyped to watch the Browns live and in person. No, but seriously, forget planning months in advance. Forget all the stress of trying to find the best price. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. You can get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more, like I already said. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. And if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% the difference. It's the fastest growing ticketed app for the country for this very reason. So go ahead, snag some tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app or head on over to gametime.co and use the code STAYHOT for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code STAYHOT for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed.
I've got the Falcons as my 4 seed.
I also have the Falcons.
I'm a big believer in the rushing offense. What can I say?
I'm just a big believer in the offense, like straight up. I mean, the weapons across the board are just, I mean, you have Mac Hollins as probably like your fifth option, like as far as guys to touch the football. Like if we go Bijan, Drake London, Algier, Kyle Pitts, I mean, that's a pretty insane group of guys that could get the football on any given play, because you could have all of them on the field at once.
Yeah, it's almost 49ers-esque in terms of like where they can put guys and they can split Bijan out and have him on the field with Algier at the same time if they wanted to. And, you know, Pitts is a tight end, wide receiver hybrid. And I think that London has inside-out versatility as well. I don't think he can line up in the backfield or anything like that. But
hey, don't hold him. He might.
Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I'm sorry. They also play like the single easiest schedule, like a comically easy schedule, because they draw like, and this is true for all NFC South teams, but they draw the NFC North and the AFC South, which is arguably the two best divisions you could draw if you yourself are in the NFC South. And then they were last place in the division last year by a tiebreaker, so they get all the fourth place teams with that. It's okay. That number I said about the 49ers, 41.7%. All right. The Falcons win percentage of their opponents, if you're looking at last year's numbers, which obviously won't stay the same, was exactly 41.7%. It's very easy. Now the Saints, 42.7. Very different. So I don't think it's a real reason to pick them over the Saints. They play, the third place teams, and that's the only difference. It's like a 3-game difference, and it's what it is. But I also, I'm really picking them because I really believe in Arthur Smith. I think Arthur Smith is really good. I believe in Ritter to be okay compared to Mariota. Yeah, and I think again with the defense, they did add some guys there, and I think it'll be trending towards average. So that's why I picked them.
I am not sure about the defense trending towards average. I think that everybody's very excited about the Falcons, and I'm excited about their offense too. But their defense over the last couple of years has been bottom 5 in the league. And yes, they added Jesse Bates, but to me, the pass rush is still going to be one of the worst in the league. I just don't really see the Lorenzo Carter, Bud Dupree, Ebiketie. I like Ebiketie a decent amount coming out of the draft, but
hasn't shown it.
He had 2.5 sacks last year and 17 pressures based on.
They do have Calais Campbell. He might be 40, but he's there.
They have 38-year-old or 37-year-old, whatever he is, Calais Campbell, who, he had 5.5 sacks last year. That's not nothing from an interior defensive lineman, but is he going to be a consistently consistently winning. I still really like Grady Jarrett, and this is a better supporting cast around Grady Jarrett than they've had in the past. But to me, they still only have like one really solid corner, which is AJ Terrell, who had a down year last year, no doubt. So he has to play better. I think he can play better because he was really good in 2021. But they need better cornerback play even from him. And then I don't know. It's just a lot to bank on if I'm stacking all the defenses in the league. Like, yes, they can improve, but again, everybody looks better on paper. And the Atlanta Falcons to me probably still have a bottom tier defense or next to the bottom tier defense.
Matt,
and their
how do you
situation
feel?
is still next to the bottom, probably. But I think Ritter can be like...
he can be better than Mariota. Mariota was awful last year.
Yes, he can be a lot better than Mariota, and they still were an okay offense with this.
Right.
So,
Matt, how do you feel about Ohio State legend Zach Harrison?
Zach Harrison,
drafted in the third round.
But I like him. He's very talented, but I don't think that's going to make a difference here. Here's what my argument against that would be, Theo, though. So you look at the guys, and on paper, the Falcons' pass rush is very bad. You know who else's pass rush is on paper very bad?
The New Orleans Saints, perhaps?
But they had a ton of sacks last year. So do you believe that is Dennis Allen masterclass will repeat itself, or do you believe that is due for regression? Because I'm sorry, on paper, 5th in sacks, 6th, somewhere around there is crazy for the defensive line they have right now.
It is crazy. I think the secondary helps too, though. Like the secondary helps the defensive line numbers. And when you have Marshawn Lattimore and Alontae Taylor, who I believe is very good, and just an overall better secondary and a more proven defensive coach, they can make quarterbacks hold the ball a bit longer and they can get home. So they both look really weak on paper, and maybe that sack number comes down for New Orleans because that is really high. And they did lose although Davenport didn't have any sacks last year. So maybe that's not the biggest deal. But they lost Onyemata, they lost Shai Tuttle, they lost Davenport. So will it remain super high? Probably not. But I definitely believe in the Saints defense more than I believe in the Falcons defense because of the combination of the linebackers, which I think is way better in New Orleans. Demario Davis, if you send him on a blitz, that's not nothing. He's very strong, aggressive, like
Demario
downhill
Davis, great
player. Yeah, Pete Werner, like he's probably better than any linebacker that the Falcons have, unless someone takes a big jump. And they have a super athletic linebacker, like 10 RAS linebacker that they drafted last year. So maybe that'll happen. But
did you know
that's what I think.
That for the past 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, the defensive line coach for New Orleans, and last year their co-defensive coordinator, Ryan Nielsen, is now the defensive coordinator and defensive line coach for the Falcons.
I do, and people hold him in a very, very high regard. The defensive coordinator, whose name I forget. They do that. I know that the Saints have Ryan Nielsen. Yes.
Yeah.
I've only listened to this on broadcasts. I'm not in the league, so I don't know. But I have remembered dialogue being like, man, the Saints really think they have something special with this defensive line coach. And for a long time, they were able to, like we said last year, they were really high in sacks. Like they were able to manufacture defense and a really good defensive line with Cameron Jordan and others who were kind of no names. Cameron Jordan's not no names because Davenport was a first round pick, but Davenport before last year was pretty good. I don't know. Nielsen is a name to keep an eye on, and I wish I could speak more. I wish I was more informed about him, but I think that he's an interesting name to at least bring up because I do think that he's been held in a very high regard across the league for a while based on what I've heard and the results that the Saints defense have gotten. And he's ascended to defensive coordinator. And he's definitely a name to watch in the coaching world. So that's a source of hope if you're the Falcons.
Yeah, I just think the Falcons, I trust Arthur Smith with the weapons a lot. I know the defense can be rough, but I think there's some potential for the Saints defense to be rough. Yeah, the Saints are going to be right there. I don't think it's going to be decided by anything more than a game or two. And again, I don't think they're a bad pick, but I personally favor the Falcons a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think both teams are, again, very, very even couple of divisions here. So I can't scream at you Skip Bayless style for picking the Falcons, but I think everyone's so excited about the skill position players that the defense is. I'm just low on the defense still. That's my whole thing. I'm just low on the defense, and maybe the defensive coordinator will just absolutely crush it year one, and I'll be wrong. But I'm still just a little bit too low on the defense to make that.
Sounds like he just wants Ritter to fail. This is what
I want Ritter.
That's exactly what it is. Buddy Ritter's throwing 4,000 yards, and Zach Harrison's getting 10 sacks. Let's go.
Sadly,
go.
New Orleans still has more Ohio State players.
This is true.
So.
Heartbreakingly. Olave, 2,000 yards and 4 wins. We'll feed families, man. That's going to mean a lot to me.
They'll
Olave,
write stories about the Michael Thomas comeback.
Lattimore breaks the interception record, and they win 4 games.
Jimmy Graham and Michael Thomas are going to win comeback player of the year.
God, I forgot they had Jimmy Graham. I can't believe it.
I thought I saw a ghost.
Insane.
He balled out in their preseason game. I was like, hold on.
I thought he was just going to sign like a 1 day, but like he's actually going to play.
He made 2 really nice like contested catches. I was like, let him.
Well, yeah, he's like 6'10", bro. What do you?
Trey McKitty is 6'10" or whatever. Like he doesn't.
I guess catching a football is like riding a bike. You never forget.
Yeah, they had him out there blocking, and he just got like ran right by. I was like, oh no. But he made 2 really good catches. I was willing to hear him out. I was willing to hear him out.
Well, if we're gonna move on to our wild card teams here.
Well, we still got the 4 seed. Wait, I haven't said my 4 seed yet. That was your 4 seed.
It's Detroit, isn't it?
No, it's Green Bay.
No, he's going Green Bay.
Okay, that's your reaction. Okay, whose defense is better, Green Bay's or Detroit's?
I don't know.
What was the question?
Whose defense are you taking?
Green Bay's.
They got Gary, they got Clark, they got Jair. They were better last year. Mm-hmm. Definitely not a perfect defense scheme-wise. They got gashed on the ground a couple times. I'm hoping that they tweak some stuff and play a little bit more aggressively, more man coverage, maybe commit a few more bodies to the box than they had last year. I worry about the safeties a lot. They were the worst duo in the league last year, and they didn't make any changes. Mm-hmm. But I think they have some star power. We saw in 2021 a pretty good defensive unit, and like if we're comparing them to Detroit, I think it's easy to see the path for them to be better than at least Detroit. And then I think the offenses are pretty similar. I think LaFleur is a good play caller. Who are you taking this skill position wise, Green Bay or Detroit?
Okay. So LaFleur, pretty comparable to Ben Johnson. Mm-hmm. Skill position wise, you say it's okay. It's a wash. Quarterback, oh, well, Goff's not that good. It's a wash. Maybe Love will be all right. I believe in Love, and that's why I have this take. And the defense of Green Bay's is obviously better. Now, all of these things were true last season, and they did not have a better record than the Lions.
They didn't, but it was neck and neck. It came down to the last couple plays of the last game of the season, and the Lions swept the Packers. They went 2-0 versus the Packers, but. Is it totally unreasonable to believe that Love can pilot a better passing offense than the Packers had last year? I'm not totally sure that Aaron Rodgers was playing at a level that was not surmountable for Jordan Love. I think that the teams are comparable. You've got a really good offensive line in both places. I don't know. I think I'd take the Packers skill position players over the Lions top to bottom. I mean, the running back duo in Green Bay is pretty similar. Like I would take Aaron
I
Jones
mean,
over
in
Jahmyr
every other
Gibbs.
conversation about offenses, we've kind of negated the idea of running back. I would rather have Amon-Ra St. Brown than any receiver in Green Bay, hands
Sure.
down, no question.
But would you rather have the receiving core?
I think you've got to really piecemeal this to tell me that the Lions don't have a better offense than the Packers. It's basically the same offense with some rookie tight ends and Jordan Love. They were nowhere close to where the Lions were last year.
I think last year, and I think the Lions offense is going to be worse than where it was at last year. Like, I don't think they're going to rank 6th again. I just don't think there's enough meat on the bone. And I think if you stay the same, you get a little worse. And I think they just stayed the exact same. And if they try to open it up a little bit more, that could be a bad thing, because I don't think Goff can do that. And I think that that's been shown. Goff can execute, last year's offense at a really high level and be in the 97th percentile in terms of effectiveness on play action. Like PFF had him as that last year in like the 23rd percentile for non-play action passes or something like that. I just think the pieces are the same, because I think Jordan Love can be at least a game manager with a little bit more upside. I think that the receiving core in Green Bay has a little bit more upside than the receiving core in Detroit. I think it's going to be an easy button type of offense that LaFleur runs for Jordan Love, with a lot of passes behind the line of scrimmage, getting the ball in Watson's hands, getting the ball in Aaron Jones's hands on the perimeter, a lot of crossing routes, let Christian Watson run away from people. Like, Aaron Rodgers didn't want to do a lot of this stuff. He didn't want the Shanahan offense. He wanted something that was more West Coast, static, drop back, pass it, like everything stays the same. Nothing moves pre-snap. When Devontae left, he didn't work out with the young quarterbacks. Jordan Love did. And when he came back, it was really rough and it was really disjointed. So I think the pieces in the engine are like worse pieces going from Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love, but like the oil is going to be better. Like, everything is going to run a little bit smoother. I think there's going to be a cohesive vision this year that there wasn't last year. And I think that's where the optimism for the Packers offense comes from. And I think with the Lions, we saw that they can have a good offense. Like, we saw it last year, but it's like, I think it's similar on paper to the Packers. So I'm picking the Packers. That's as simple as it gets. I think they're.
Do you think the Packers defense got better?
I think Gary's health is huge. I think Gary was playing like a defensive player of the year candidate last season. And if he is back healthy and doesn't tear his ACL and like can still look all right, then I think that it will be better. And I think that defenses kind of fluctuate random. Like, you can't really predict much with defense. And last year, the Packers defense looked so good on paper, and I tried to predict it to be really good, and it was really bad. This year, I think it could regress positively a little bit, just through tweaks and just through, there were week 1 against the Vikings, there were so many blown coverages, and maybe it's just because I'm a fan of the team, like I'm making more excuses. But I do think that they're similar on paper, or more similar on paper than it seems, because they were basically in the exact same spot last year, playing for the exact same thing in the last game. I guess the Packers were the ones that were alive going into the last game, and the Lions were dead. The Lions just won that game. So if they were so similar last year, I think they can be similar again, because I think the loss of Rodgers, like, the ceiling gets taken away to some extent there. But I also think there's going to be some positives that come from moving on from Rodgers and going to Love. I do think there's going to be some of that. So I think they're still similar. I'm like, Packers are a good bet. I think so.
I'll give you that. The Packers are a good bet. I'm not as convinced that going from Love to Rodgers is an upgrade, and I like Love, but
it's not an upgrade, but the passing offense could be better. Like, I don't know if that makes any sense, or if I'm just a raving lunatic.
I get where you're coming from. I don't think the Packers' weapons are good.
Yeah.
Watson,
Aaron Jones is a great running back, but
not even talking about running backs.
Yeah.
Their passing options, I think, are rookie tight ends, who I like, but rookie tight ends.
Yes.
And Christian Watson, who is still maybe a little bit more weapony, get the ball in his hands than a real, number
runner.
one receiver.
Yeah.
And I do think that limits you in some ways. I also just don't think the Lions offense is going to regress. I think it might rank a little lower, maybe.
That's what it is. That's what regression is.
And like, oh, well, they're going to try to do more stuff with Goff that he won't be able to do, and it'll be bad. I'm not sure about that, to be completely honest.
I mean, I don't know if it will, because we're looking at you said the running back groups are better, and this is an offense that loves to incorporate their running backs. If we're going to incorporate those, that would be the offense that you would really account it for.
Okay.
If you think Gibbs is an upgrade from Swift, and Swift missed time last year.
That's true. Every team thinks that way. Every team has some of that. Okay, how about this for offenses? You tell me if this is a better offense than Detroit.
Okay.
Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Baltimore.
If they're healthy, sure.
Kansas City.
They have the best quarterback in the NFL.
Seattle. And
it's
maybe not.
Maybe.
It's a little questionable. Okay. Run game matters, man.
San Francisco.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Buffalo.
Yeah, I would say so.
Jacksonville.
It gets a little questionable.
I'd take Jacksonville. Dallas.
I don't know.
I think so. I mean, look. Okay. Goff. I'm probably gonna pick every quarterback like who's in my top 10 over the offense led by Goff. That's pretty good. Here's the thing, though: they were top 5, and if this offense had like one of these star QBs or like Dak or something, like we wouldn't be saying this. We're saying like, oh, Goff is a game manager; it drags him down. They're going to have to regress because of it. Yeah. But you can't say then Love is going to be a game manager, and that's a good thing.
I think that he's going to be a game manager, and I think that's a good thing because I think Rodgers wasn't a game manager last year. I think Rodgers was like a angry old man and was like Goff would never go on a show and say like, I don't like Ben Johnson's offense, man. I want to run something different. He didn't want to play the LaFleur's system. That's like the opposite of a game manager.
Look, I think it'll be close. I'm going with the Lions. Their offense is really good.
It is good. I just think that they're closer than people think. And if it's going to be the Lions, and maybe it will be, like, it's very, very possible. I trust the Lions coaching more than I trust Green Bay's coaching in terms of like just creating your own luck. I don't know if that's the way to put it, but avoiding penalties. What happened in week 18 last year? Quay Walker got ejected for doing like the dumbest shit imaginable. I think the receivers are maybe more talented and have more potential than the group in Detroit, but like, are there going to be frustrating drops? All of the Green Bay receivers are like prone to them. Pre-snap penalties, we saw a decent amount of them in preseason. It's like, the Packers need to mentally really lock in, and everyone needs to grow up fast. And if that happens, I think they can beat the Lions. But if it doesn't happen, then they can't. And I think that's like, everyone needs to lock in. So I don't know if that'll happen, or if enough
fun in games
will.
Until the Bears make it over the Packers.
The Bears and the Vikings, I don't think they're in the same tier as the Lions and the Packers. I think the Vikings, I mean, we talk about regression. The Vikings are like this team is going to heavily regress. Like, every single thing says it that they're going to.
Yeah.
So
they're still in the NFC North mix for sure.
I think so, but they were just so low in so many metrics last year, and then they lost Za'Darius, and then they lost Dalvin Tomlinson, and it's like,
you know who they gained?
Don't know, man.
They got Jordan Addison.
Right. Ivan Pace.
Ivan Pace.
So yeah, maybe Flores will be good enough but it's like you need good players to run a good scheme, and it's like I don't know if this Vikings defense
I
has
don't know,
got.
what was the
I
year
know
one
they
of
have
that Dolphins
one.
defense? What was the year one? What was the roster of that Dolphins defense year one? When everyone's like, man, why are they so good? Because they had like no one, and they were getting after the quarterback like every play.
Yeah, I think that Flores can manufacture some chaos, but he also needs the corners to hold up on the back end. And then I'm like, I don't know. I'm not really in on Vikings winning this division, and then I think the defense of the Bears is still too bad, and I think Fields is just still I don't know. Fields or Love, it's an interesting question, but the Bears, maybe their offense is like electric.
We're not even going to get into that. Love hasn't even played yet, man.
The defense in Chicago, I don't think is anywhere near Green Bay. Like they were last year. They added some guys, but it's like the front four is just so bad. So.
And I think with the Packers too, we're talking about them like Love is just going to be like great. It's going to be no problem. And there's worlds where it's not. And I believe in him. And I feel like I'm pro Packers. I'm just
winning the division.
Quarterback starting first season.
Yeah.
You're still, and the weapons are still probably a year away. That's where I stand on them. But like, I don't have them far off the lines. I don't hate them as a pick.
Yes, I'm not telling you all need to join me I'm on the Packers bandwagon. I'm a Packers fan. Maybe I'm just seeing more positivity there because I'm coping. But I'm at least, I want to be on record because I think it's possible, and I think it would be a really good call. And I don't think it's crazy. I don't think
it's not crazy. I also think the other thing is the Lions are very uncool to pick. Very uncool.
Everyone's picking them, dude. How am I supposed to look smart?
On. You can't pick them then, man.
How am I supposed to look smarter than everybody else? Look, I do this for my Rams predictions, saying they'll miss the playoffs, and they do. That's what gets me up out of bed in the morning. I can't lie. So
if I miss on the Lions, nobody blinks an eye.
That's true.
You miss on the Packers, hell to pay. You miss on the Dolphins, hell to pay.
Well,
yeah, if you miss on the Dolphins, you will have hell to pay.
The Dolphins are the only prediction that matters for me, guys. But like nothing else besides that, like people are going to come after me for it.
But I'd like to say, I love that you do it because it's so entertaining. It's so
entertaining.
I'm like otherwise, like I wouldn't really care what the Dolphins did. Like most, as a Panthers fan, most irrelevant team to me. Now I'm locked in every Dolphins game. Let's see. Twitter's awesome. It's like my favorite NFL storyline this year outside of my own team.
Right. The Dolphins win 7 games, and we're getting a screenshot of Theo's face on the timeline.
I love it. I love it. I don't care. I'm very different in real life than I am on social media. But one thing that is true in both places is that I don't care what other people think of me. And
I know
this is one of those times where
I respect it
where that comes up. But
I think you have to have a little bit of that to do this job. So
a little bit of it, yeah, you do. But there's a lot of things you need to have. But that's
that's one of them.
That's my mentality. So. That's my Packers take.
So that's all of that's our 4 seeds. Okay. I was about to move on, and lo and behold, Theo had the hottest take of the whole show. But 5 seeds.
It's not over yet, guys.
Oh no.
I'm kidding. I don't have anything too crazy.
I was about to say there's only so many crazy ways you could go.
No. Stay Hot is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. I'm looking at the Underdog Fantasy app right now. I'm seeing everything it's got. It's got MLB, NFL, PGA, NHL, NBA. I'm looking at MLB drafts. It's the middle of the season. How can that be? The season is never dead. You can always draft a team in a bunch of different leagues. NFL, obviously, it's prime time to draft a fantasy team. You can let it ride the entire season. You can do best ball, so you don't even have to check it. Like the best players each week get automatically inserted into your lineup. It all comes down to what you're drafting right now. It's a good way to play. There's a bunch of different pools with different levels of entry fees and prizes, but they're all entertaining. There's a lot of different ways to play. You see the pick'ems on Twitter, over under on Anthony Richardson, 1.5 touchdowns, something like that. I know what I would pick on that spread, but string a couple of those together. It's it's a fun way to play. I can't lie. And we've got our promo code, Stay Hot. That's all one word, Stay Hot. And if you use that promo code when you sign up for Underdog Fantasy, they will double your deposit up to $100. So you put 50 in, they gave you an extra 50, and you have an $100 bill in your account. So it's a pretty good deal. And if you are interested in that kind of thing, Stay Hot has a promo code. So that's all I got to say about Underdog. Check it out.
Who are your 5 seeds?
Seattle.
I have the Cowboys.
I have the Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Cowboys and the Seahawks on paper, Micah Parsons, CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, it's a really good group. So they're super
I think their
talented.
defense is a lot better than the Seahawks.
Yeah.
I think they have less holes. I think in the trenches they're a lot stronger. Seahawks are not a terrible pick or anything. Like, any given year there's some variability, and I think there's some overlap between the Seahawks and the Cowboys. But I'm rolling with the boys. I believe it's their year. In fact,
Boys, it's their year. They're
It's
going
their
all
year,
the way.
let me tell you.
Yeah, I mean, I also think like even if we're looking like Matt, you said the Cowboys defense. I think even the secondary. Because I think people would look at the Seahawks secondary as like, oh my god. I mean, they had Tariq Woolen ball out last year, and they added Witherspoon, and they should have Jamal Adams back.
Seahawks defense struggled last year and got better, and maybe it's not perfect, but it has strong pieces.
Yes.
It's made up of good and bad, and you'd prefer that as a team building than like mediocrity across the board. That's what I'll say.
The Cowboys have
I like the Seahawks a lot.
But the Cowboys have a lot of strength on defense.
The Cowboys are a better defensive team.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody will argue with that.
They had a great secondary last year, and they
their
added Gilmore
linebackers concern me, but
sure, but they're going to get after the quarterback, and their secondary is great, so I'm not too worried about them. And then offensively, obviously, it's kind of same old Cowboys. I think going forward, minus Zeke, but
and minus Kellen Moore.
Yeah, but some would say that he cost them in the playoffs.
Yes, that's true. I don't know. I don't have an opinion on it. I'm just sorry.
That's okay. I have opinions on the coaching, but I'll get into that. But, yeah, the Seahawks and the Cowboys.
Really? Okay, so Packers fan here believes they'll win the division and McCarthy's team will underachieve.
Yes, I think this is. Yes. I do believe that, and I think that's the truth. I think that the Packers are just. I think that's a fair way to look at it. Look, for the Cowboys, I've got them as my 7 seed. So
I was about to ask, do you have them missing the playoffs?
No, I don't have them missing the playoffs. I don't have them missing the playoffs. I have them as the last seed in the division, though. I don't like McCarthy. Okay, and this is just
Why?
Maybe I'm just totally biased, but. Here's what I think happened last year. I think Kellen Moore was super aggressive. I think that he was calling a lot of stuff like down the field. I think that he had some weird wrinkles that are only Kellen Moore things, and I think he called them a little bit too often. And I think McCarthy wanted to just play it a little safer. I think McCarthy got sick of the turnovers, and when the San Francisco game happened, he was like, look, we played your way. Like, we turned the football over 1 million times. We lost in the playoffs because of it. Your weirdness is out of here, and I'm taking control. Because it was a mutual departure, and the offense had been so good results-wise over the past couple seasons that, like, I don't think that there's any merit in firing him on performance issues. I think there has to have been some philosophical disagreement. And I think the philosophy, I think it was just a bit too high flying for McCarthy, to be completely honest with you. And they need to limit the turnovers. They really do. But I just worry a little bit about, like, is going from Moore's problems, and he does have problems. I think he can be a bit too cute. I think that he kind of lives in 2 different worlds, and, like, he doesn't flip between them very seamlessly. Like, you chart a Cowboys game, which I did at one point last year, and it was like gun, shotgun, 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 all the same type of play on one drive. Next drive. Under center, under center, under center, under center, under center, under center, under center. Next drive. Shotgun, shotgun, shot. So I think like he has a couple of different things he wants to do. Like I don't think he can sustain his just really high flying passing attack, like with a really high pass rate. So they're pretty high in the league in run rate last year, but they just kind of like had drives where like, this is a running drive. That's kind of what it felt like to me. Or like this drive is a passing drive. And they were kind of predictable in that way. But I think the commitment to the run game and I think the aggressive concepts, like it scored a lot of points. And I think something maybe a little bit more conservative, just a lot of quick passes. I think that their run game, I think their pass rate is going to be higher because they didn't really add anything to Pollard. And I think that they're not going to lean on Pollard to carry it like too many times. And I just think it's going to be a little bit of a neutered version of what we've seen in the past. But I still think they're talented enough to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I believe in their talent a little bit more than you do. I mean, this is a team that, like, say what you want about going from Moore to McCarthy, but this team survived Cooper Rush's starting quarterback over Dak.
And I think McCarthy liked the Cooper Rush offense when it was like, well, they won a bunch of games under Cooper Rush, and it was like not as high flying as when it was Dak, and there weren't as many turnovers as when it was Dak. So I think he was like, why don't we just call it like it's Cooper Rush all the time and then just put Dak in there? Like, I think that may have been part of his decision is like they won more games or had a higher winning percentage when it was Cooper Rush. They weren't turning the football over as much. And I think I think McCarthy's kind of an old school guy. I don't really view him as this like modern marvel of coaching. He's still bad managing the game to me. And I think he still is kind of hanging on to some outdated ideas about offense and like, oh, we don't want to turn the football over. We want to, which obviously you don't want to do, but like you want explosives. And I just don't think there's going to be as many for the Cowboys this year under McCarthy.
Yeah.
But I still have them in the playoffs because their defense is really good. And they're like, I believe in Dak to run whatever scheme. Like they've got good players. They can run different schemes. But Moore has his flaws. But man, when McCarthy's got stale in Green Bay, I think he deserves a lot of credit for making Aaron Rodgers what he was. But there was a point where he needed to change, and he just didn't change at all. Like there was no, as the receivers got older, there was no leaning on a stronger running game. There was none of that. It was just all stale and bad towards the end. It's like, has McCarthy really changed since then? Is he going to reinvent himself, or is it going to are you going to run into some of the same issues? I think they're going to run into some of the same issues, but still very talented.
Fair enough. I mean, we're splitting hairs here. I don't hate him. I'd be questioning you if you took him out of the playoffs entirely. I have him as my 5 seed, and then I have the Seahawks as my 6 seed, which we've already talked about a pretty decent amount.
And then 7 seed?
Giants.
Or Blaiden, I'm sorry. Well,
my 6 seed, Seattle. I'm right there with Matt.
Yes.
And then 7 seeds, the Giants.
And they're my 6 seed.
And then Matt, are they your 7?
No, the Saints are.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I can.
I like the Giants and I like the Packers. The Saints have too easy of a schedule.
They're too
competent. The Giants have too hard of a schedule. There's too much. Like they are going to have to overcome. Like from a team perspective, and I'm willing to bet on this type of stuff all the time. Oh, they're going to regress, but the team got better. I like to do that. I think they're a better team, but they are fighting two very powerful forces, which is single score games going their way regression, which they project to have some of, and all of a sudden going from a very easy to a very hard schedule, which is going to be a big deal for them. The Saints, again, they have a laughably easy schedule, with so many gimmies that the Giants don't have. And you swap them, it wouldn't even be a discussion. But I think that stuff matters. Do the Saints and
Giants play each other this year?
I believe they do late in the season. I think that's a playoff
Week 15.
game.
Week 15.
Yeah, that might be. I
think that's going to be a playoff game. There's some real possibility. It's just, how there's consistently teams that are like their tough defense fights them in through an easy schedule. might be the Saints this year. So I'm sorry, Giants fans, but like my whole picking this philosophy, and that has me with 2 NFC South teams, but I don't think that's crazy.
I don't think it's crazy either. I think that
because
the
it's
NFC
like
South,
first off, we're talking like 9 wins here. We're talking like
Right.
9-10 wins. I don't think it's crazy.
I think the NFC South, they can all rack up wins because they all have easy schedules, or at least 2 of the 4 can. Some of them can, not all of them, most likely. But I think that there's a bunch of competency in that division. It's not like there's 4 just complete losers. Like the Falcons have a lot of talent. I think that the Saints have a lot of talent. I just think the quarterback situation in this division is the worst of any division, and I think that's what makes it bad. As far as this, like even in Tampa Bay, like the supporting cast of Tampa Bay isn't so bad, but the quarterback situation is awful. So, yeah, I don't think it's crazy, but I think the Giants would win the NFC South, and I'm like maybe this is a flaw in how I'm doing it, but like betting on talent here over schedule, like with the Giants. I think the front 4, I think they could all be monsters. I think the offense shouldn't regress too heavily because 2 years ago it was Joe Judge, and last year it was Staple. And I think like that's just 2 completely different levels of competency. And I think last year was a baseline, and 2 years ago was a baseline for 2 different coaching staffs. So I think treating last year maybe not as a starting point, like exactly at 9 wins, but good scrappy team is your starting point, and then adding Waller and
you cannot tell me that you think the Lions offense will regress, but the Giants are fine.
I can't tell you that because
no.
Okay, yes,
can't.
I can because there's way more meat on the bone to improve. If you're the Giants, there was nothing in terms of deep passes in New York last year. Worst team in the league.
And they're going to try to make Daniel Jones do more,
and he will struggle with it. I don't think that is as much of a guarantee because I think Daniel Jones can do what the offense tells him to do. Like I would say the
same about Goff.
And last year the offense was telling Goff target down the field sometimes, and that just was not what they were telling Jones to do. Like I don't think Goff can improve as a deep ball passer from where he was last year. I think Daniel Jones can be more explosive. Plus, who did the Lions add on offense like Darren Waller?
The Giants.
No one
they
did.
Added
they didn't add anyone.
Gibbs.
Yeah, I guess so. They did add Gibbs, but I think Waller is more impactful than Gibbs.
Did you like Jalen Hyatt coming out of the draft?
What?
Did you like Jalen Hyatt coming out of the draft?
I liked him as a deep threat. I think that as a 3rd-round pick, I did like him. I thought, what grade did I have on him exactly? My old computer died, and a lot of my grades kind of went with it. But
Hyatt is okay, but you're really relying on Dayball. And
I'm okay with
Paris
that.
Campbell is okay, but you're really relying on Dayball. Waller, I really like, but he's super injury prone.
He is injury prone. I also like the Giants'
You're going to be playing
defense
tougher
better.
defenses this year.
You are.
And most importantly, I don't want to turn this into me hating on the Giants. I believe in Dayball. I do think the offense will be better maybe against a tougher schedule, but the schedule matters. It's a killer. It's brutal. And you're telling me that the division with the hardest schedule is also going to have 3 playoff teams. I don't believe that. There's no way. There's no way.
I just maybe, I guess, but things happen over the course of the season. Like the schedule now is not the strength of schedule after the season.
Now, I'll give you that. If I was comparing 10 and 20, okay. I'm comparing 1 and 32. It's the Giants' schedule will be hard. The Saints' schedule will be easy.
Man, yeah, the Football Outsiders, which is what I'm looking at right now, really hates the Giants to repeat what they did last year. Really hates it. And again, with the
1-score game regression, and I know, I can't say it enough. I do think the Giants are headed in the right direction, but progression is not always linear when there's outside forces at play. And this year, the outside forces do not like the Giants. Now, again, I think it's going to be close. I have them right outside. I have the Packers right outside. It's going to be a good race in the NFC. It's going to be a lot more interesting than people want to give it credit for.
Yes, in the hunt here, I think has a lot of.
I'm interested in those teams.
Yeah.
Even like Washington is a team that I would love to be high on. Their schedule's too tough. It's too bad. Sorry. The whole like we're going to play a weak schedule and the defense is going to carry us and maybe how it turns out. That would be awesome if they didn't play in the NFC East. It doesn't work. Like, it's just too tough. It's just not lining up this year unless Howe is fantastic, which who knows. Or Bieniemy is great, which who knows. It's not totally unthinkable. But
no, it's not. I thought about Washington when I was putting this together. You know, their defense is really good, and they do have good skill position players. And
Minnesota.
And Minnesota's
and
there
Minnesota.
Too.
I mean, it's really there's not a lot of like just doing nothing teams. It's the Bears and the Buccaneers, and everyone else is trying to win.
Well, the Cardinals and the Rams.
Oh, the Cardinals and the Rams. Well, there's 12 teams then.
Yes, I would. Yeah, I think that it's going to be a big pile up in that wild card spot. I think that the teams that can win the Super Bowl out of this group, I would say there's 4. And that's Dallas, Seattle, Philadelphia, and San Francisco. I don't know if any of the other teams will give too much of a chance. And that's not really the case with the AFC, where I think there's a lot more than 4. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of parity outside of from 3 to 10 or whatever.
And okay, exactly. There's a lot of parity. A lot of these teams are close. Who has the weakest schedule?
I guess.
That's I mean, but go back and look at like former teams and just like the standings and stuff. It's like, dude, that stuff matters, man. And I said it on a couple podcasts ago. We think about that for college football. We totally think it's completely irrelevant in the NFL. And it's really not. It's less because there's way more parity in the NFL than there is in college ball. But it still matters a lot. A lot.
Yeah. I took it into account, which is why the Saints are like the 3 seed, you know, but not as much as you did, and we'll see.
We'll see.
Sorry. Yeah.
So rundown before we get into the next segment, I want to run down. So 1 seed for me, Eagles.
We all had
2 49ers, 3 I had the Saints, 4 I had the Packers, 5 I had Seattle, 6 I had the New York Giants, and then the 7 seed I had Dallas.
Yes. I had Eagles at 1, 49ers 2, Lions 3, Falcons 4, Cowboys 5, Seahawks 6, and the New Orleans Saints at 7.
I had 1 Eagles, 2 49ers, 3 Lions, 4 Falcons, 5 Cowboys, 6 Seahawks, 7 the New York Football Giants.
Okay, yeah. So some differences there. I think that this was a little bit more disagreement than we usually get. So
a little bit.
Not
saying much.
We're still mostly the same.
It's mostly about like the teams that are going to finish 2 games apart or whatever, and it's going to come down to like.
But a little bit of difference.
A little bit of disagreement.
The next segment is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy has tons of different game modes to play if you want to win some money. But they also have a news page. And if you were trying to track cuts this weekend and you wanted to know who is on practice squads and who is on teams and who wasn't on any team, Underdog Fantasy was the place to do that. Their news feed, I mean, every little transaction, you can find it on there. I was shocked some of the names I was seeing. So yeah, every detail accounted for on the Underdog Fantasy app. But the news that we're going to be talking about in our Underdog Fantasy news segment
is Matt Corral.
Matt Corral getting cut. I don't have too much to say about that besides tough. We're going to talk about another quarterback, though, who got hurt and never really recovered from that, and that is Trey Lance, traded to the Dallas Cowboys. What? It seems so exciting, and then, like, do you guys actually have anything to say about it?
I don't think it really makes a ton of sense. It's like a Jerry Jones
for who?
For the Cowboys. The 49ers, it's whatever, You've made
Yeah.
the decision of what they were going to do with Lance was made before they moved him to the Cowboys, if that makes sense. What is the end goal here? To replace Dak? I don't know.
I have no idea.
It's like a long shot on a Lance type is fine, and it's a 4th round pick, so it's not a big deal. But like the hit rate on this is incredibly low, wildly low, very, very low. And to do that when you already have a guy like on your roster who is your dude, I mean, is the idea like maybe we can develop him for several years and then
change.
We're gonna go with him over Dak to save money. Like I don't get what the game plan is other than something completely psychotic, which is like Lance becomes a great quarterback without playing.
Yeah.
And he's on contract for like what, 2 more years?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think that has to be their plan, is like he becomes a great quarterback without playing. Like I would guess that they had a really high grade on him that draft. And then when they heard they could get him, they were like, maybe he's that guy that we thought he was. But you would think if you're giving a 4th round pick isn't nothing. It's not a 7th round pick.
No.
For a guy that's just a warm body in a quarterback competition a few years from now, like I guess that's what they're doing it for. But like what quarterback competition a few years from now? Is there going to be one? Are they not going to re-sign Dak? Is this an option for that? It's like
maybe it's the money. That's the only thing I can think. Maybe Jerry Jones does not want to pay Dak because he doesn't think he's quite that level. And I actually think there's maybe some truth to Dak is really great, but he's barely in the tier of guys who you want to pay all that money.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's not the best team building strategy. But if that is what you think, this would not be the way to go about this at all. The way you would go about that is trading Dak and drafting somebody this offseason.
Right. It would be like what you did with Russ. Russ was
Yes.
his contract was up and they didn't want to pay his new thing and they traded him for a bunch of firsts. And I guess they had Geno and maybe Lance is Geno.
Hey,
I guess that's what their plan is. Maybe.
Hey,
but
their plan is we're just going to Geno Smith, Trey Lance. Great. How many times in your lifetime has a Geno Smith situation ever happened?
Right. It
One
seems
time.
It seems like that's a hell of a long shot when you could maybe because the Seahawks had a top 10 pick, like they could have traded up for a quarterback. So that's probably what I'd prefer to do even, but maybe they just think Lance can be Geno again.
And if they really feel like Dak at his price is not the team building strategy they want to go with, then why are you gambling making that whole move, which would be the biggest roster move of your entire team? It's the biggest decision you would make, right?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're gambling that whole move on Lance. So you're not going to do it if Lance doesn't develop in camp. So do you you either believe it or you don't. You're either, cannonballing into the pool or you're not. There's no halfway doing this. We're going to get a guy and maybe, but otherwise we're not going to try. Like, believe it or don't believe it, And
maybe that comes in a few years. Like maybe right now they're like, well, we think Lance could be a guy and we think Dak could not be a guy. Maybe this is just an option we want to have available.
Fair enough. That's very true.
And if Lance looks bad in practice, they can go a different direction. But if he looks really good in practice, that just gives them another solution in the chamber. And that's got to be their thinking. Like, if it works, then we'll have an option. And if it doesn't work, we'll have nothing.
Well, here's my question. How many years left does Lance have on his rookie deal?
2.
Okay, so I guess that could work out. I guess the timing could kind of work.
Which is the same number that Dak has.
They're trying to Jordan Love it with a guy they didn't draft.
That's almost exact. And also Dak is not that old. He's not 40,
No.
So it's it's just a wonky one. And let's say that the Dak stuff doesn't work out. Is McCarthy going to survive if the Dak stuff doesn't work out and then you're going to get a new coach in here?
No, I hope not.
I just...
So then whose decision was this? McCarthy or
Jerry
Jones?
Jerry
Well, McCarthy doesn't
Jerry
build a
Jones
roster,
I mean, I'm sure they had to beg Jerry Jones not to take Manziel. It's I don't know.
It's also funny
Whatever,
because
it's
they won
fine.
games with Cooper Rush last year, did they not? And then they bring in
Yeah.
Lance, who is like what are you going to do? Throw it, like, let's say Dak gets hurt right now. You putting in Trey Lance or
Yeah,
Cooper
you're putting
Rush?
in Rush. You have to put in Rush. You can't put in Lance, I know you haven't played much yet, and I know things haven't worked out for you so far, but
And I
now
know
you're
we
on
have
the
a-
Cowboys, and you don't know anybody on the team. You don't know. It's your first week here. You are starting. The expectation is that we win the Super Bowl. That's our goal. That's the place this team is at. Thanks, buddy.
I guess the hope is they. Well, remember what happened to Tony? Like when they drafted Dak, Romo wasn't terrible, was he? Like
Romo was older though.
he
Yeah.
was
And
older.
also,
Romo was
Romo was
older.
getting to the point where he was so injury prone he like could not play,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
basically immediately became that.
Yeah,
the
he
second
like
that Dak
broke
was
his
on the
back.
team.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
it was
I
really
guess
bad.
I guess I don't hate it. I just think
I'm
I'm interested to see how it plays out. I think it's a very
Right.
interesting situation.
We'll,
It's
we'll
very
know. We'll
unique.
know in 2 years. We'll know in 2 years.
it's such a long shot. Like I feel like your average 4th round pick is it worth a 4th round pick? What's the risk
Is it a
reward
4th round pick
is
this year or next year?
this year, I think.
Mm.
And what's more likely, your 4th round pick hits just in the draft, or
Look,
Trey Lance becomes Geno and you cut like, to me, like the 4th round pick is like more likely, but this is like a weird home run swing in an attempt to get 2 franchise quarterbacks in your building and give you multiplicity when Dak's contract is up.
I don't know. On the one hand, I'm glad that Lance is like not playing right away, but on the other hand, like, okay, so how is he going to get experience to be good?
Yes.
How are you gonna outside of a Dak injury, which I guess is possible? Like in 2 years, are you gonna be like, well, Trey Lance has looked good in camp, so Dak walk?
Yes.
And if you want to move on from Dak, you're gonna just let him walk in free agency
For nothing.
I guess they could
don't
franchise tag him. They could franchise tag him. That doesn't make sense.
trade him.
I don't know. It's just weird. It's weird, and I don't like it, and it's never gonna work.
I'd say that
Who knows?
that might be harsh, but it's also probably the most likely.
Yeah.
It's
option,
probably
honestly.
okay. We could talk about the whole like how the situation itself works with Dak there and Lance. Reality is, if you're trading for a guy for a day 3 pick who was a 1st round pick who a team spent 3 1st round picks on, your odds are bad.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Your odds are bad. They're bad odds. And maybe you could argue that it's special circumstances with Lance a little bit because he's still so young and he never played. And Shanahan is maybe quick to get really turned against guys. But even then, it's like it's just a weird situation. And if you did create any drama with Dak, dumb.
Yeah.
You know,
Theo, what did you say that
not
Jimmy
worth it.
Garoppolo said about?
Jimmy Garoppolo was asked how he felt that Shanahan dealt with the quarterback situations and naming the starter and everything during his time there on a podcast. And Garoppolo asked the podcaster, how do you think they've handled it? And the podcaster said, well, I think it seems messy. And Jimmy G said, that's one way to put it. So, yeah, it's clearly there's a lot of chaos in terms of the 49ers quarterback room, but they seem to win and put up numbers no matter who it is.
You know what they don't
Garoppolo.
win? The goddamn Super Bowl.
Games when Trey Lance has been the starter. Sorry.
Too soon, Theo.
Too soon.
Too
Anyway. Woo, this thing has gone on a while. I do want to talk about Jonathan Taylor for a second. They did not trade him. They asked for Jalen Waddle, and the Packers were interested, which I thought was interesting. I've never seen a situation where the ownership is so clearly like treating a player badly. Like, how are you going to say he's not worth much money and then try to get publicly like trade Jalen Waddle for him? It's like, is he worth something or is he not worth something? Like, if he's worth all this trade value, why isn't he worth a contract? And why are you lying about a back injury or saying that he has a back injury that he doesn't have? Maybe he does have a back injury and he's lying about it. I saw one clip of everybody like, look how he's walking. He can't even walk. And I was like not super convinced by this clip. But I don't know. I would be pretty pissed if I was Jonathan Taylor, and that's really the only takeaway I've got on it besides what were the Packers cooking.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree. There's a lot. I feel like there's more holdouts than usual. No?
It's just with the running back position. Well, yeah, with Chris Jones and maybe Bosa as well as in the same situation.
Usually there's like one, but like now it's like, dude, everybody's got to be fighting and scratching and clawing and whatnot. And I guess, that's how you negotiate. That's
right.
Saving money is the whole game if you're a contending NFL team. But
yeah, maybe the
quarterback
contracts
trying to reset the tight end market.
Oh, he should.
I mean, yeah.
He totally should fight to do that.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they traded a bunch of picks for him.
Yeah, they traded for him in the middle of the year, and he was awesome.
And then they want to throw to him like 150 times a year. Yep.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the Lions traded him away because they didn't want to do that, and then they like having a tight end. That's why they drafted Laporta. But at any rate, I just feel like it's really weird how they've done Jonathan Taylor. I just don't think it makes sense why you wouldn't pay him a contract, but you would say he's super valuable in a trade situation. Like that just seems selfish. Like,
it's because they're trying to save money. That's all they're doing. They're just trying to, they're trying to get him for ultra cheap.
Yeah,
it's as simple as that. And it's very lame.
Very lame.
Trying to freeze out your running back just because you can, because like you're really just trying to nickel and dime a couple $1 million,
and that's
cap
probably
space is like
it's probably not as smart of a long-term idea as you think it is. You don't want to be the organization doing that.
No, exactly. That's like, and again, like you are not putting an all-star next to your rookie quarterback. Like that's what you're putting at risk here is like developing your 4th overall pick. That is harder to do without Jonathan Taylor. You can argue on the price, but it's harder to do. Like
no question.
Like now is the time to pay Jonathan Taylor.
Right.
You're not paying Anthony Richardson, who you hope you do end up paying one day.
When Anthony Richardson is Josh Allen, then you don't need Jonathan Taylor anymore. But he's not Josh Allen. He's Anthony Richardson, and he hasn't played any games yet, just like Lance hasn't, And the thing that was nice about Lance, if he would have played, was that he would have had a great supporting cast. It's nice that they're playing Richardson right away and getting him reps, but you're throwing him out there with worse players, like he's going to be worse. That is common sense. So I don't like what they're doing. The Packers made a call. I think that's interesting. I think that, probably would have traded A.J. Dillon away in that case and just had that same kind of thunder and lightning type of backfield, just with more thunder and less Aaron Jones. And now it's going to be the opposite. Yeah, so they probably would have something like that in a 3rd or a 2nd, and it would really had a strong running game to lean on while Love develops. But if the Colts wanted Jalen Waddle, I
don't even know what
a superstar receiver, I don't know what they wanted from Green Bay. So
Gary,
yeah, no thanks. So I just think it's weird how they've done Jonathan Taylor, and I think that it's a bad look for the organization for sure.
Yeah,
can't disagree.
Cannot disagree.
I think that's all the news I've got to talk about.
Yeah, I don't have anything else. So thank you all so much. We didn't give our Super Bowl pick.
Out of the NFC, I would say that I will pick the Eagles. I think that it's an Eagles-Chiefs rematch.
I agree.
I think the top 2 dogs are the Eagles and the 49ers. And while I think you got to probably pick who's going to be healthier, and I think if I have to guess, it'll be the Eagles. But it could go either way.
It could.
It's between those two. The Niners can only be healthier than they were last year, obviously.
Sure.
At least, they're not going to be screwed from a quarterback position. But just kind of like the NBA, who's going to which of the top dogs are going to be the healthiest is a lot of it. And the 49ers just kind of project to be less healthy. So if you're making me pick, I'll go Eagles. But it's close.
Who wins it? No one can
claim I'm too crazy or crazy different if I'm predicting.
I'm going to claim it.
Chiefs Super
Do
Bowl.
the Chiefs repeat?
I think they would. I'll say Chiefs go back to back. Although they've got the Chris Jones situation to work out.
Matt?
Still.
Sure, I don't know. I don't know.
Give me the Eagles.
We're all going to just pick the exact same thing.
I'm going to pick
Go-
the Eagles.
you should
Yeah,
pick the Eagles.
I'm going to pick the Eagles. I'm going to take Jalen Hurts.
I'll think about it. I'll post it. I'll post it on Twitter before
All right.
before the season starts.
Fair
So
enough.
I'll ponder this more.
Fair enough.
Sounds good.
That's all we have for you today. Thank you all so much for tuning in. It's been an absolute blast. And as always, we're going to catch you on the flippity flop.